Hello and welcome. This is Miriam. I'm welcoming Brooke and all of you on behalf of Next Step Integral. And Brooke McNamara is going to be offering her Right to the Heart of Motherhood course again starting November 1st, and it goes till December 17th. And to just give those of you who are interested or would like to join us again, we've done this now 3 times already. This will be our 4th. But for those of you who'd like to come back into the fold or who are thinking of joining us for the first time, we just thought we'd do a little 20-minute session to just give you a chance to get to know Brooke. I always find when I'm taking a course, I really want to know who's behind it, who's the person who's going to be hosting the space. And so it will be Brooke, and she is an absolutely amazing woman, a fellow mama, incredible writer and poet, an artist, a dancer, one of my favorite people on earth. And I am so thrilled to have her as part of our Next Step Integral faculty. And I get to join as project manager, and then as a fellow mama and writer too. And every time I take this course, it enriches my life so much, and reminds me of how incredibly important it is to do a few things, to gather with other mamas. Often is just the most precious thing for me personally. I'm often moved to tears just by the sense of community we experience. But then also, Brooke, that you carve out and you encourage us to carve out even that little wee bit of time just to sit down and write. It makes such a world of difference. I always feel like I have so much creativity in me, but it's just what you're doing is you open the tap for us, and then it comes pouring out. So I'd like you to share a little bit what your hopes are, your thoughts around offering it at this time. This is the one time we're offering it this year, and yeah, just any thoughts you'd like to share, any welcoming invitations to people who might be curious and who might benefit from this.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you for having me teach the course again. As I'm listening to you, and I want to welcome everyone who's listening to this. I'm feeling how we offer this once a year, and I really look forward to it. It's kind of like the end of year treat, because it's, like you said, so connective and so incredibly beautiful, sometimes overwhelmingly, sometimes, tearfully or joyfully just beautiful to see into other mamas' lives via their writing, and also just in the time that we have in the live calls to just connect and share about what it's like. And you and I have been talking about that it feels especially important right now as the pandemic continues to unfold, and whatever problems or crises we might be tracking, as well as daily miracles we might be tracking. It just feels like a really ripe and fertile and important time for us to rely on each other and lean on each other and be resourced by each other, as well as our own well of creativity. And like you said, I as an individual artist, I know that the difference between me writing or not writing, or feeling inspired or not feeling inspired, so often comes down to having other people that I'm doing it with. Even if it's just in my mind that I know that you're writing up where you are and that I'm writing, and we're going to come together on Friday to talk about it. So the accountability and the sense of support and connection of having other people. And then also just, even just a little bit of structure. And this course gives a lot. It gives a lot of invitations, a lot of material, a lot of, I offer a teaching every week, and also prompts and methods that are specific to kind of tricks up my sleeve of how I've been able to actually get to the page, even while I have a lot of responsibility with my kids. And then just poems and quotes to read that might be inspiring. So there's a lot of structure and content that is not meant to all be more to do, but it's just kind of a buffet for the mamas of like, here's some ideas and some questions and some prompts and some assignments. Take what inspires you, leave the rest. And for me, sometimes just that little bit of nudging and sparking and structure really helps kind of hold me in a container where I will make that critical gesture of moving to the page. And then once I'm there, there's something that is really innate that flows and is really life-giving. But it's sometimes challenging to get there in the midst of so much life.
Yeah, I remember in past courses how sometimes I would feel slightly guilty because I'm co-hosting this with you and I hadn't written a word. But then every week we'd have the live call and you made this beautiful space for us to write with your prompts in the live call. And I'd at least write then, and I felt so thankful just for that, like just that container right there. It got me to write at least once a week. And I often think, you know, in this day and age, and like I think specifically with the last 2 years that we've just all experienced in many different ways, but we've also gone through a collective experience and are in the middle of it. There's been such an inundation of information and us having to adapt and pivot and try and make sense of things that are very hard to make sense of. And I've been finding, even just in the last few months, even more so, that anytime I can put sort of a stake in the ground for creativity, it's such a beautiful, it's not a forceful pushback, but it's more like, and I get to exist too, and I get to speak too, rather than just always being on the receiving end of the news and the dictates coming from left and right about how we need to coexist to make it through this time. It feels like there's something so healthy about creativity. Is almost like creating some space around you and for your voice, right? Which is something you do so beautifully, is just like encourage us to sometimes even find our voices if it feels like they've been buried for a while, or if we've just gotten really silent. And like you said, when I hear these mums speak, I'm just blown away by the voices, right? That we get to hear.
Yeah, me too. It's nourishing and moving and powerful in a way that I don't quite find anywhere else, because something about motherhood really, what's the word, like primes us and grinds us and polishes us into, you know, when we do have the opportunity and the space and the listening ears, what comes forth after we've been, you know, holding so much space and receiving so much and tending so much. Then when we express, it's really rich. There's a lot of layers, and sometimes it's really funny and absurd, and sometimes it's heartbreaking, and there's just a gorgeous range of flavors and textures of motherhood. And then sometimes it's not, the content's not about motherhood, but it's these powerful mamas speaking about other things that are, you know, really connective and resourcing to hear. And I do think when you were talking about like making space for ourselves by expressing, for me, there's always a feedback loop, and I can start from one side or the other, but there's, when I'm going to be in creative action and in creative discovery, it's like a prerequisite of that is that I'm actually feeling myself and feeling my life and feeling the world. And sometimes lately there's so much going on, I feel like I can't quite feel as much. So sometimes just starting to write is a way to start to unpack the layers in a slightly slowed down way. So the writing helps me feel. And then sometimes there's a big feeling that I need to find meaning or unpack or just create an artifact, you know, in the form of a poem. So sometimes the feeling drives the writing, but this feedback loop, the more I'm writing, the more I'm feeling, and also the more I feel free of my feelings too. It's like I get to be intimate with them, and then I get to put them down on the paper and and let them go. And something about that feels like not a luxury right now, but a necessary act for well-being, and also a gift to others. Sometimes when I read others' writings, or particularly mama's writings, I get to recognize myself, and there's something that clarifies that wouldn't if I didn't receive that. So that it's really a generous act to ourselves and each other to take the time to feel and express.
Yeah, I'm hearing you speak very much to the personal experience it is, but also the collective, right? And the sense that we might feel very alone at times, but then we read, like, there's such a commonality and there's such a uniqueness in the experience. Yeah, that's really beautiful.
Really.
I'm just thinking of questions someone might have who would be considering taking this course. So one that comes to mind, because it's about writing in connection with motherhood, and as the title it so beautifully says, write to the heart of motherhood. What would you say to someone who maybe just doesn't feel like a writer, but feels tempted to be in a circle of mamas, or is creative, or hasn't felt creative in a while? Like, where does one need to feel on sort of the spectrum of identifying as a writer or not, or having experience as such?
It's really wide open, and really, in terms of the identity of writer, it's very inclusive for if you're like professional, or if you do not identify as a writer but have like a little inkling that writing might be supportive to you right now. It's not about us like confirming that you're a writer and therefore you're allowed, but it's just, do you feel drawn to putting your thoughts on paper or on the screen as a way of finding more aliveness and more connection? That's the only thing, is if you're drawn to that medium. And I would say, I mean, I think it would be cool even if someone wasn't writing but was drawing. It could be even adapted to that. Everything could be adapted to, really, it's just creative expression. And that's the important piece, is that we're here to, and that's also wide open, because like you said, that sometimes people don't really write much. They're just starting to kind of actually listen for the creative spark, or listen for the voice. And if like 5.5 weeks are spent listening, and then the very end a couple words come, that's beautiful. That's totally allowed. So it's really not about the product very much at all in this. It's really about that process of retuning to what is that thing that's like quivering and wants to come up and through, that's going to dredge up aliveness and truth and beauty and meaning.
I'm moved to put it into the large scope too of how when we are raising a child or children, we're really so intimately in touch with the future as it's emerging, and with evolution as it's happening. And I feel like, to me, that is part of also giving expression to that which is often witnessed very intimately, in one's home, but in a way sharing that with the world, or bringing voice, whether that's just, again, in the collective of those taking the course, but also it can get shared beyond that if people want to. And there's something about taking that intimate relationship with the future in this parenting journey and offering it to the world, that I think is something not to be underestimated. Like, we hear so many other pieces of life coming at us through what we consume. We often don't hear of the absolute gems and silliness and heartbreaking moments and insight and wisdom that literally happens in the hearth of home. So I always find that just absolutely incredibly important too.
Yes, totally. And it's kind of the creativity, to me, what I'm so committed to, and I want to say addicted as I come back to it again and again, for the rush and for the joy and for the energy that it brings, is feeling those ideas or images or rhythms or whatever is just in the unmanifest. It's not quite in form. And then getting to get quiet and listen and kind of find what are the right words or the right colors or whatever that I can bring this in imperfectly into form. But there's something about that process which is so incredibly relatable to the process of giving birth. And then, like you said, of watching our children unfold and watching the future kind of an evolution happening right in our very homes. And yes, it's not to be underestimated. There's so many, I mean, my son said to me last night when I was, my 4-year-old, when I was putting him to bed, he said, "Mama, I have a booger." And I said, "Oh, do you need a tissue?" And he said, "No, I'm just wiping it on my leg until it gets deleted." I was just cracking up. I mean, I went and got him a tissue, but I was like, the fact that he's putting language together, like he's deleting his booger by rubbing it into his leg. I mean, it's so gross, but it's also funny. And it's such a funny word to use. And so a lot of my poems include these. It's like, I'm not creating what's poetic about this poem at all. It's my children, or it's our connection, or it's the poetry of how difficult it sometimes is to hold so much responsibility, and especially in our current global context. And so I think, yeah, for me, I want to turn my attention away from the news and listen to what stories and emotions and connections other mamas are making in their minds and hearts.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I didn't ask you this ahead, so I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you did have a poem you'd want to share with us, that would be lovely. If not, that's totally fine.
It would have to be an old one, but I love that idea. Let me see if I can pull something up. I have dog-eared poems that yeah, here's one. Okay. I just turned to it, so I'll trust that it's the right one for this moment. This is from my last book, so from a couple of years ago, from Bury the Seed. And this poem is called Falling. This is not a stage for me to tell you how to improve in any way. There is dignity in staying with whatever is real, with a long spine bathed in breath, even as we fall. If you're still listening, thank you. May we turn from this tiny contact here toward the opening day, grateful, with gumption, receiving what we belong to. Last night, I dreamed a baby cow fell from a periwinkle sky, and when I helped him stand, the vertebrae under velvet fur rose and fell like little hills beneath my happy hand. I'm telling my young son this dream. He's laughing sparks of hilarity out his eyes, their beauty barely matched by the softly falling snow outside.
I love how writing can just weave worlds together, and weave from, like you said, from the very concrete to the imaginary, to the dream, to the it just feels like it weaves so quickly. And yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening. And that, I think that's what I love too, is poetry feels so right for motherhood because of that. It's like you can take, like literally I sat in a cafe, I was telling my son that dream and he was laughing so hard. And then I just was like, his laughter is so beautiful. And that like put me in a mood to write a poem. And then I don't know where the beginning came from, but those little concrete moments can just associate to something much more intangible and subtle that really wants to get expressed and can really be helpful for another person to hear, to make sense, like, oh yeah, I have that subtle experience too. And oh yeah, that concrete thing I can relate to as well, but it can really tune to the different layers of our being, all the way from like vast open presence to subtle dream worlds to the concrete ordinary everyday. I love that about poetry too.
Totally. And the paying attention, right? I'm reminded of,
Yeah.
I think it's Glennon Doyle Melton who says we can talk about paying attention, and then she sort of moves that over to praying attention. And
Oh,
as
yeah.
we pay attention, in a way, it's a form of being in the world that
Mm.
has that, it brings awe back.
Yes.
Yeah,
I
because you're
love
paying
that. Praying
attention to
attention.
things that can just seem normal, and then suddenly they're wondrous and
Yeah.
worth noting and talking about or writing about and sharing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about her term brutal too, like how
Yes.
life is beautiful and life is also brutal.
Yeah.
And I think poetry does a great job of making space for all
Totally.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
So I think we could close for now. Hopefully, anyone who is interested, can reach out if they have questions. The website contains a lot of the details and information, and we'll put the link below this video. Is there anything else you'd like to mention to close?
I would just say I'm available if anyone is listening and feels drawn but hesitant or nervous or has questions. I feel available to answer questions, and I just really want to welcome you if you're listening and you feel kind of drawn but maybe a little intimidated for whatever reason. Please reach out, and we're happy to connect and help make a bridge.
Beautiful. I cannot wait. I
know, I'm so
like
excited.
I'm so looking forwards to meeting and re-meeting, because we've had some mamas who've taken the course now, I think every single time, and because there's so much creativity, it's never the same, so it feels like such a deepening each time, but it always brings me a huge amount of hope and enrichment, just to know, because goodness gracious, I mean, the mamas that gather around this hearth of writing together are just such incredible human beings. So yeah, I'm really honored to participate with you in this beautiful journey.
Me too. I love you. Thank you for hosting me.
Of course. Okay.